Welcome, how you guys doing today? I'm John Murdy, creative director and producer of Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood.
I am Chris Williams, art director and production designer of Halloween Horror Nights.
And Chris and I brought Halloween Horror Nights back to Universal Studios Hollywood. If you guys are fans, you might know it was known for a long time. And we did that in 2006, so every year since that, Chris and I have created all the mazes and attractions. And today, if you've been following us on social media, which apparently you do, we told you guys that we have a big announcement. Actually, we're going to announce our next maze live on stage today. So, I'm going to ask our guys to run the video. You like that one, yeah? And you know, I actually have to credit you guys at social media, because when the first Insidious movie came out, I noticed a whole lot of you saying, you should do Insidious, you should do Insidious. And so with the new movie coming out this year, Chris and I talked about it, and then we had to figure out how to make this deal. So we actually have a special guest who's going to join us out here today. We'd like to invite to the stage our good friend Jason Blum. Welcome, Jason.
Thank you. Hello again.
So we actually all met many moons ago at Halloween Horror Nights. Do you remember this, Jason?
Yes, we did on the opening of Friday Night at Paranormal 2, right, with Rob Zombie. Yeah, we went. It was my first Halloween Horror Night experience, and I was looking at my BlackBerry.
A lot.
And because it was Paranormal 2, so the only sequel that all of us were thinking about at that time was Blair Witch, because that was the only found footage horror movie that had a sequel. And so we just were really hoping that our sequel went a little better than that sequel, and that night we found out that it did. So it was a very happy night for us.
It was really surreal.
It was it was crazy.
I remember taking Jason through mazes, and Chris was taking him through mazes, and you know, it was constantly looking at the BlackBerry because you were getting the box office live, I think, that night.
Yes. It was a great night. It was very fun.
So ever since then, we've been talking about, you know, working together on something. And it's taken until now, until we could hook up on Insidious. Do you mind talking a little bit about the second film and why you think it makes a great maze?
No, I'm happy to. So the second film is kind of like the first. One of the things I learned actually a lot on Paranormal, and that we didn't do as much on Paranormal on those sequels, is the first is kind of answer a lot of questions. And so when I was talking to, well, first of all, it was very much in question whether James and Lee were going to actually do a sequel. And until they said no, there were a lot of financiers who were like, you gotta go make it. And I kept going back and I kept saying, as long as James and Lee are saying maybe, we're not going to make the sequel, because I really, if they do it, it'll be better than if anybody else does it. So we had to wait a while for them to actually come around. But I was really happy they finally landed on an idea that they liked enough to make a second movie. And the second movie answers a lot of questions in the first movie. We spent a lot of time in the further and these kind of what hopefully have become kind of Insidious, iconic places. And that is what we're going to walk through very soon, right?
Yeah, and I should say, if you guys are fans of the Insidious franchise, we're not just doing Insidious 2. We're actually doing the entire franchise, Insidious and Insidious Part 2. And in just a little bit, we're going to take you guys through a behind-the-scenes presentation and show you some of the things we're working on. But I wanted to ask real quick on the subject of paranormal. I know I've actually resisted doing paranormal mazes for Halloween Horror Nights because, you know, what we do is, you know, it's so visceral. It's always, you know, you're walking in a scene, you got 10 seconds to execute that scene. But Chris here is a big fan of all things paranormal. So I wanted to maybe ask Chris why he was attracted to doing Insidious.
I think that when you look at the first film and you see the ghosts in there that are very tangible and actually are very physical and can do physical things to you, which is harm you. You might see some of that actually in the second film, but we had felt that we could embrace that with our characters and make all that come to life.
And one of the other funny things is last year at Horror Nights, James came. And James and Lee are big Horror Nights fans.
Big fans, yeah. I actually learned, originally I think I learned about Horror Nights a lot from James and Lee and then Rob, but James and Lee always talked about it. And James, is he getting your, no, we don't know yet. We do know yet. Did he ever get it? You're looking at me like, I don't know.
No, I'm with you.
Yeah, did he ever get, has he gotten the award, the special award? Has he gotten?
I think he'll get an award.
You think he'll get an award? That's good. Well, I'm glad to hear that.
Well, it's funny.
I'll tell you a funny story about the ghosts in Insidious. So when James, this is one of the reason that we make all of our movies inexpensively is so that we can do weird stuff and take chances. The higher the price of a movie, the less kind of risks you can take. So when James and Lee first pitched Insidious, James said that the third act of the movie, the further, was going to be exactly like a David Lynch movie. And the fun thing about making inexpensive movies is that if I were an executive and Insidious was a $20 million movie, you'd say, James, you're out of your mind. You're not making a David Lynch movie with the third act of this movie, you know? You have to, we can't do that. And happily, we were making a very inexpensive movie, so I was like, well, one of the things I often tell directors before they do these movies is, what have you always wanted to do in a horror movie, but you've always been told you can't? Like, try that. And so that's why those ghosts are such 100% James and Lee's creation, and the reason that they were able to do that and try something new is that they were, you know, we weren't working with a lot of resources, so you can take creative risks. And now we get a maze.
Exactly. And, you know, it's funny how these things come to be, you know, all these different deals that, and the people we get to work with in the filmmaking community. But last year during Horror Nights, if you've ever been on the Universal lot, and particularly the back lot, and I know you know that, I know that you know this, the phone reception is horrible, right? When you're out on the back lot. You can never, like, you'll get a call and you can't hear who's calling you. And my phone kept ringing this one particular night at Horror Nights, and I didn't recognize the number, and I think I was with the producers of Walking Dead that night. So I was like, whatever. And then I got home later that night, and I thought, I should check those messages, and it was James. And he had just gone through La Llorona, and he was like, oh my God, La Llorona. And he's like, we should work together, we should work together, we should work together. So that actually started last year, and then when Chris and I came over to Blumhouse for that first meeting with all of you guys, James, Lee, Jason, we all sat down, and then Lee told a very funny story about his experiences in Horror Nights, because we actually, you know, they were the creators of Saw. You know, if you know the Saw franchise, James and Lee created that franchise. And Lee was so excited to go to the maze when we first did it. And he brought all his friends from Australia, and they got to the scene, and if you know Saw, you know, Lee also plays the other lead character in the film. And he got into the bathroom and he knew, like, oh my God, you know, this is where my character is. And he, you know, it was like seeing a, you know, his own action figure or something. He was really excited about it, and he could see the performer's feet underneath the curtain. And he got all excited and he ripped the curtain away, and the performer was like, ah! And then he felt a tap on his shoulder from our people, and they're like, sir, come with us, please. And he's like, well, no. And they're like, yeah, you can't do that. And he's like, no, I'm the writer of Saw. And they're like, sure you are. And his friends were actually like IMDb'ing him and going, see this? This is the guy who wrote Saw. Yeah, come with us, sir. So,
that was true, and it went pretty far.
It went really far. But, you know, it was funny. So Chris and I's first time meeting Lee, he opens with this story, and we're like, so we almost kicked you and all your friends out of Horror Nights. Cool, do you want to do Insidious?
And you guys have been, you know, nice enough to, the one thing that James and Lee kind of caveat they had about doing Insidious is that they wanted to kind of know every step of the way what it was going to look like and feel like. And working with these guys, it's been very collaborative, so they've been very involved in the kind of behind the scenes of this particular maze.
And we actually, and that's our ideal with Horror Nights, and I'm sure, you know, when you're working with movies or, you know, television shows or anything like that, you want to work with the creative individuals involved with that franchise. So for us to sit in a conference room and talk to Lee and James and Jason and start sharing ideas, we actually came up with the main idea of the maze. You know, sitting there just talking with the filmmakers. And Chris, it had a lot to do with the further, so if you wouldn't mind, explain how we thought we could connect these two franchises, or these two movies in the franchise together.
We had just felt that a good connection, really, in between the two is going into that paranormal realm of the further, actually, with, you know, very dark, very gloomy, low-lying fog. You know, we're trying to do some specific things that we really haven't done before, actually. And some effects, low-lying fog, some different other ways of treating some blackout areas of the further. We also felt that, you know, that's just a great way to do our connection, actually, in going from really the end of the first film into the rolling of the second, actually.
And there's that great iconic element in Insidious, which is the red door, you know? And so that's always kind of the departure point to get you into the further. So scenically we felt that was a great way to tie us from the first film into the second film. But I think what I should probably do right now is show you guys some stuff. Do you guys want to see some stuff? You know, whenever Chris and I tackle anything, you know, and this is kind of a rule that he and I made years and years ago, all the way back in 2006. We decided that, you know, we had to have a criteria for evaluating whether a movie or a television show or a rock band or anything made a good attraction for Halloween Horror Nights. We came up with these three things, and we've stuck to them. We've bent it occasionally, but we've mostly stuck to these rules down through the years, and it's very simple. It's awareness, environments, and characters, and I'm just going to show you guys real quick what that means to us. Awareness is pretty simple. I mean, you know, we're looking for things that you, the fans, know and want to see. It could be box office, it could be, you know, properties that have been around for a long time but have a huge fan base. But when we look at any attraction, this is the first thing we look at. And when you look at Insidious, it's like fall out of the
See,
shit.
James Wan is here.
Click. Okay, it's haunted. These are just some of the franchises that we've done over the years. If you guys have come to Horror Nights, you've probably experienced a lot of them. But with Insidious, I'm going to have you drive if you don't mind. Well, hang on. With Insidious, obviously the first film was a big hit. And the second film opens Friday the 13th, right before Halloween Horror Nights, so we thought it was perfect.
Yes, it does.
And then
you'll be very pleased, or at least I was.
And then, you know, the next thing we look for is, you know, iconic environments that we want to recreate for a live event. And I think I have some pictures. This is really the work of Chris Williams here, you know. This is what Chris does for Halloween Horror Nights. And you might recognize some of these environments. Chris, if you can see them from the stage, you might want to point a couple of them out.
Well, let's see. Maybe the middle, that would be your guys' left. You know, the Thing frontal with Snowcat down underneath that. You know, the Saw frontal as well. So, you know, we really try to, even all the way up to like some UV looks and frozen areas, like you can see with one of the frozen girls in the Alice Cooper maze. So we really try to detail it out, and if we get really good, if we're working with, so like Jason, if we get really good images and really good behind-the-scenes production photos, we can really emulate it. We can really duplicate. So if John and I have done this before and had to scroll through
14,000 images on Insidious. That's how many pictures we went through in the 2 films.
Yeah. So obviously we've got great production photos to pull from. So we can look at every wall, we can look at every prop essentially, and also characters and really bring them to life. And that's how, you know, we can really design and put our things together.
And then speaking of characters, that is the third thing. But when you talk about environments, when Chris and I first, started talking about Insidious, obviously there's, we felt that there was lots of great iconic environments. You have the Lambert house, you have the incredible seance scene that takes place in the first film, you have Callie's bedroom, which creeps me out. And, you have the further itself, then you have the lair of the Red Demon, you have the Red Door, and in the second film you're going to learn a lot about Parker Crane, and there's a very iconic environment for that as well. But in judging all of these environments together, we thought, okay, we got enough to do Insidious. And then lastly, it's characters. And we're looking for great iconic characters that we can replicate with live actors. Because what we're doing is different from a movie. We're doing a live presentation. And pretty much we treat it always that it's a new scene every 10 seconds. This is a smattering of characters that we've done in the past for Hornets. That's kind of everything from the sculpts and molds, but just some of the characters we've done over the years. And of course, when you talk about Insidious, you have a lot of great characters to choose from. You've got the old woman, you've got the red-faced demon, you've got the long-haired fiend, and you've got all of the further ghosts. And of course, in the new film, if you've seen the trailer, which I hope all of you have, you see Parker's mother. And we're bringing all of those characters to life. Now let's talk about the maze itself. The players that are involved, obviously Blumhouse Films and Jason Blum, obviously James Wan, the director, Lee Wan, the writer, but also working with Film District. So all of us get together and we all collaborate. And this maze in particular was really a collaboration with the filmmakers. So from day one they were involved in the creative of what we're ultimately going to do for Horror Nights. Let's show you how this all starts. So this is how Chris and I start a maze. We take Post-it notes and we write down 3 different things. It's usually scenes, characters, and action. And we plaster them all over our office. And then we move them around until we've got basically the show flow. And that is the Insidious maze right there. That's how it starts. And from there, it goes to a written treatment. So I'll typically write, in the case of Insidious, I think it's 75 pages, scene by scene, room by room, character, sound effects, what you see, what you hear, often what you smell. Because you've been through our mazes, right? You know they have sense. And we're trying to identify all of those things so that I can take the treatment and hand it to Chris. And then from there, he does the drawing package. That's a ground plan of Insidious.
It might be tough to see.
It's tough to see on purpose.
So we start off with, like what John said, then I'm working on a rough, small ground plan of trying to take our space that we have, say like in a tent, and trying to rough out and configure all of our rooms within that space. So, and like I said before, based on like some production photos and such, I'm trying to make the sets as big and as they are in the show, but then also confine them down that we actually have you walk through the room. And we're also, John and I are also trying to figure out the scare as well as what you're going to look at. So it's little distraction gags in some areas as well. So, sometimes I'm roughing it out in like maybe a 16th inch scale, and then sometimes I'm roughing it out in big, but then I keep refining it, and then we finally land into where we're at with the full ground plan. Sometimes we actually lose rooms that we can't fit it in. Sometimes when John and I sit and do all the Post-its on the wall,
Actually, most of the time.
we get really bullish sometimes, and like, oh, wouldn't it be cool, kind of a thing. But once we boil it down to the space that we have, and you guys know and see, I will take every inch that we have and try to scare you with that.
It's like creating a giant jigsaw puzzle, basically, because he's taking this existing footprint and trying to figure out the flow of it. It also has to include backstage access, so our actors can get in and out of set without being seen. Technical rooms,
emergency accesses as well. So all that has to be taken into consideration. You know, we're working with LA County Building Department and Fire Marshal as well. So all that stuff has to be taken into consideration, as well as ADA. We're rolling wheelchairs through. So, yeah.
So when we talked about, I can't even see it from here. The facade for the attraction, what we wanted it to look like, it was pretty simple. We wanted it to look like the Lambert House. But there's a lot of houses in Insidious. There's the house in the first film, but then they move, right, Jason?
Yeah, there are a lot of houses on film, but actually, it's in the first movie. We only shot in 2 houses, so the further is the first house where they live. We turned the lights out. That became the further, and then the second house is the second house. So yes, there are not quite as many practical locations, and then in the new movie there are 3 main locations. I think that's top secret, so don't tell anyone. Uh-oh.
But that's a choice we have to make then. So Chris and I talked a lot about, well, what should the facade be? And what we landed on was the Lambert House from the first film.
And it's on the DVD cover.
Yeah.
So
and the film poster.
Iconic. Yeah. And it talks about on the DVD cover as though, is this house haunted, So that just ties in with it as well for the first film.
And then what Chris has to do after we do the ground plan, we do the facade elevation, every single wall, literally every single wall, has to be drawn up, and it's all drawn by hand. None of this is done in a computer. It's all done by hand, usually with a bunch of illustrators and set designers that you tap from the motion picture industry.
Yeah, most individuals might be in Set Designers Guild or Illustrators Guild. You've seen Lucas Colshaw's work regarding a bunch of illustrations from past years. Lucas has worked with us since 2006. He's in the Costume Illustrators Guild. So most individuals are, really truly highly trained professionals in what they're doing here.
Third time's a charm. Starting to get a little freaked out. You're driving? Okay. There we go. Thank you. Okay, so this is an environment you might recognize from the first film. It's the red-faced demon's lair.
And that's just a little tidbit of what you're going to see. That's just one elevated wall and showing the mirror that, like in the film where he was sitting at. So that's basically in scale elevation. Now that would go to several trades with us, so scenery, props, and also construction. And that's broken down for them, and they take it and build it, and we make it come to life.
And why don't we talk a little bit about, today, if you're out on the floor, you might see Larry Bones from Boneyard Effects. Larry's our makeup artist who creates all of our character masks and makeup looks for the event, and I brought along some of Larry's work as well, if you wouldn't mind hitting the next slide. Before we get to designing the actual makeup, oftentimes Chris referenced Lucas, who does a lot of our character illustrations, and the reason we have to do this with Insidious is we have to take what they did with the live actor, but then we have to translate it again to a live event. So particularly what we're looking at is the expression that we want that particular character to have. So these are some of the further ghosts from the second film, and if you click to the next slide, there's another one.
Yeah. And what was really important for us, and actually we had mentioned that in the first meeting that we had with them, is that these further ghosts had this really weird, creepy smile to them. And And that's what we had given from production photos, behind the scenes ones. We were able to sit down with our illustrators and really try to get them to really refine really good characters with a really creepy expression.
And if you click to the next one, and then one more time, now we start getting into the sculpts.
Yeah, these are through Boneyard effects, through Larry Bones' group. So here's some creepy smile further ghosts, and they look great.
So right now we're cranking out, I mean, sometimes we'll do as many as, sometimes it's a mask, sometimes it's a makeup prosthetic. I know last year on Walking Dead alone we generated over 2,000 prosthetics. So we call it the assembly line of gore. It's just constantly all these different artists sculpting, sending pictures to Chris, and then sending it, and then Chris sits down with me, and then we make tweaks, or we approve it, and then it just keeps going and going. Let's click to the next slide. Another further ghost, go ahead, and here's the sculpting process for that.
This just keeps us with consistency of the film. So we're going to make this into a really cool, very comfortable foam latex mask for our character. And so when they come out to greet you, they're going to have that really crazy, creepy smile. So each and every one guest will come out and see these creepy smiles versus us trying to do, say, a face character, which would be hard for them to maintain that creepy smile constantly. So this is where we keep consistent with the film.
And the choice between saying, oh, are we going to do a mask or are we going to do prosthetic makeup, a lot of times it comes down to casting. A lot of these ghosts are really age specific, and a lot of them are older. And while we have had senior citizens audition for Horror Nights, if you ever went through our Texas Chainsaw Massacre maze, the first one we did, we had a woman in her 70s that played the matriarch of the family, and she was awesome. She got real possessive in the kitchen, though. I remember that. I remember trying to go through the kitchen, and she was like, "This is my kitchen, you can't come in." And I was like, "Well, we built it. We're coming in." But you can't rely that you're going to get dozens and dozens of people that are going to show up. They're going to be 70 years old. They're going to want to do this type of work. So that's really what informs whether we decide to do it as a mask or a makeup. If you wouldn't mind clicking to the next slide. Now we're going to get into some of the iconic characters you might remember from the first film. This guy is called the Long-Haired Fiend. And Chris, you had a specific look, from the first film that we wanted to use for this particular character. And it happens really quick in the film.
It's when Renee Lambert hears something on the baby monitor, goes upstairs to Callie's room, and is attacked by the long-haired fiend. But at the very split second, when he comes right up to her and face to face, that's where we wanted to show that. And he does an actual paranormal transformation, if you watch real close.
And I have to ask Jason about this, because Chris and I freeze frame the film, and we go frame by frame by frame, and we're trying to figure out exactly what you did. It's the scene in the first film where she pretty much licks his face, or the long-haired fiend, and you get that weird flash frame, and it looks like his face is eaten away. And that was obviously a conscious decision to change his look at that moment. Do you remember that?
Yes. I keep talking about low budget. We had 13 cents per visual effects. That was one James fought very hard on. And I think most of the reason it was so short is because that's all we can pay for.
There you go. But it's great because when we looked at that very, very, very short visual effect, we went, oh, that's a great look. So obviously the actor has no eyes in that particular flash frame in the film. So that means the actor's going to have screens so that he's looking through black screens so that he's able to see. Sometimes we've screwed up on this, by the way. I remember when we did, it was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. There was this guy who was wearing a skin face and he was sitting in the bathtub. And we were like 2 weekends in. And then this very nice but very shy performer comes up to me and Chris and he goes, "Am I supposed to see?" "Yeah, you're supposed to see." And he's like, "I can't see." "Let me see that." We look at it, we're like, "Oh, we didn't cut the eye holes out." You're a trooper. Yeah, this happens sometimes. If you wouldn't mind clicking to the next slide. Now this is the sculpted process for Long-Haired Fiend. And that's what we're trying to get, is that nasty tongue that he does that horrible face lick. So it freaked us out, so we thought, why not? Let's put it in the maze. Go ahead and click to the next one. Obviously, a very, very important character in Insidious is, I call her the old woman, Jason. Do you guys have a different name for her?
No, she's the old woman.
Okay. I've seen online, there's a bunch of different names for her. But we really, really, really latched onto this character as well. She plays a bit of a through line in this attraction. And actually, we're going to do something that you can't do in a movie. Well, you could back in the 50s if it was a William Castle film with smell-o-vision. But, I don't know, when I was growing up and I would go visit my grandmother, we'd go to Grandma's house, I'd always go in the bathroom. This is going to sound worse than it is. It's not where I'm headed. But her perfume, there was always like the old lady perfume. You know what I'm talking about? I think it was like rose water.
Yeah.
But also in the paranormal, smells are a big deal. Particularly with apparitions, they often have a smell that they describe, smelling before you see something or vice versa. So we're known for using our scent cannons, and usually it's, to be honest, sometimes it's things like urine. It wasn't Saw. But this time we thought, let's try to do something different, and right before you see the old woman, let's have that scent, and let's repeat it multiple times, so you start to associate the scent with the character. So there's the artwork for the old woman, and if you click to the next slide, that is her sculpt in progress right now. Obviously pre-paint, pre-hair. Talk about hair for a second, Chris, because this is the crazy thing about when you're creating a mask, how you have to hand punch it.
Yeah, with Larry's group, this will go into a foam latex mask, and then they're going to hand punch hair, each individual one, through the front, and then as well as have a wig through the rest. But they'll hand punch it for that more realistic look. So when she's right up in your face, you'll be able to see that nice hand punched hair.
It's an incredibly long, laborious process.
Very long process.
Go ahead and click to the next slide. Okay, you know this guy, the red-faced demon. Now I have to ask Jason again, because I've seen different names for him. How do you guys refer to him?
No, red-faced demon. You
All right.
got it. You're
on
to us.
Because people have said to me, no, it's the lipstick demon. And I'm like, no, I'm pretty sure it's the red-faced demon.
We had arguments about lipstick.
And Jason, this guy who plays the red-faced demon, there's something else that he did on the film.
He did our music. He does the great. He's a terrific musician, and he scored the movie, and he scored other movies for us too.
So can I ask, how did you decide to have the composer be an actual actor in Insidious?
Well,
Is it the budget again?
No, well, of course, it's always a budget, but
we'll come down and
but
we'll
he had a very,
I
I think, unless you know something that I don't, I think he had a very unique look.
Yeah, absolutely.
And James was like, you're great at music, but can you play this? Can you be in the movie too? And I think that's how it happened.
No, I think that's exactly right, because if you click to the next slide, you'll see our sculpt, and particularly the nose is really important, and that's what we're trying to nail there. And if you see the weird pattern that's on the actual sculpt, that's going to be the coloration for the character as well, so that our painters over at Larry's group know how to paint the red look onto him. And go ahead and click to the next one. And that's our little sneak peek of Insidious. And making the haunted attraction, the maze, it's Insidious into the further, because we think the further is such a key element. So right now, really, guys, we'd like to open it up to Q&A. Questions for Jason, Chris, myself. So if you guys have a question, I'll have our moderators help out. But go ahead and raise your hands. Don't be shy. Down here in front. And it better not be about a maze we haven't announced yet that I can't announce.
No, that's cool. Pleasure seeing you again. Last year you did, was it Silent Hill? And I liked a lot of the effects that you did with the flashlight, because I believe I was watching one of your videos and you were trying to emulate the video game. Well, with the further, the gentleman had a lantern. Is there some way, without going too further into detail, some type of element into that, like when you're going through the further, just,
Yeah, I have to say, what was the first thing James said when we all got together? He's like, can you give every guest a lantern? Yeah. We're going to use that as a weapon, man. Smacking my characters. And that sounds bad to say, but the reality is, when it's fight or flight. When somebody, I have to physically demonstrate this, I hope I don't hurt myself. When somebody jumps out and scares you, and Chris and I, we always talk about playing the angles. Because if something's coming at you like this, you can see it coming from a mile away. But if you work their peripheral vision, it's much scarier. But the effect you have is people do this, or their hands flail about. So we're always really conscious of that. So we talked with James and I went, no, we understand the lantern's a key important element. So you're going to see it right out of the gate. And on the lighting audio side, this is a really complicated, very sophisticated maze for us because we're trying to, do the paranormal. So when you go into the seance scene and that lantern is on the table, we're trying to get that effect as if the energy is, in the room is being sucked out of it, and the lantern is kind of like, we're using that as the focal point. So all of a sudden everything is going to go dark and you've got those pop, 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 those flashbulb strobe lights going off. And then we tease it a few more times in the maze. So it's an extremely important, iconic element. We just didn't want to give it to all of you, as much as we love you. We just thought that, with your screaming and falling and all that stuff, that you clock somebody. Cool. Next question. Right here in front.
So there's a lot of construction going on at Universal Studios.
Yes, there is.
So I'm not sure, I think they blocked out the Despicable Me. I don't know what that's going to be. But are we ever going to get a soundstage maze or the studio tour or anything like that?
It's funny. I get asked that question all the time. And actually, Chris predates me with Horror Nights. You've built mazes in sound stages, remember?
We have done those before in soundstage like 34 and 36 years ago in the past, actually. So yeah, we have done those in the past.
The tricky thing for us is the lot is really, really busy. Pretty much every show on NBC that's going to be coming out this fall is filming on the lot right now. And so we try really hard to get them. Eventually we will, I think. But it's difficult because it's a movie studio, and its first and foremost purpose is to make movies and TV shows. So it's difficult to do. We've come really close in years past, and then we were really, really close to getting stage 28 like a year ago, which is, of course, the Phantom stage. If you know the history of Universal, you can walk in that stage today in the Paris Opera House set from the original Phantom of the Opera, Lon Chaney's Phantom of the Opera, is still in there. It's still standing. It's never been torn down. And we've gotten really, really close to getting it, but then a movie comes along and it's, bye-bye Horror Nights. So it's something we would love to do, and I just guess stay tuned. Okay, next question. How about in the back, girl with the dark hair?
I was wondering, due to the maze last year, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the smell in the maze was really pungent.
Yes, it was.
Yes. Has anyone ever thrown up in the maze?
I wanted to throw up in that maze. Opening night, I'll tell you the truth. Opening night, I walked through that, and I walked into the first scene. The set is called Dead Body, by the way. It's lovely. And it was overpowering. And we tweak things. We open the event, we constantly make little tweaks and adjustments. And one of the first tweaks I made after opening night was, turn that down, please. And sometimes, honestly, with scent cannons, we don't even need to turn them on.
We're at the end of September, it's still pretty warm, so we just need to actually just put those scent cartridges in there. We don't need
Sometimes
to
we don't even turn them on.
It's so hot that it will give off that smell without even turning them on.
And the worst part is the way these things are, we work with these companies that make these scents, and then this FedEx package arrives. And I'm always the guinea pig for huffing the scents.
I have nothing to do with it.
Chris won't do it anymore. It's always me. I always take it to some remote part of the back lot, and then I open it up and I'm like, vomit. That smells like it. Oh my God, that's awful. Let's use it. Burning human flesh. This is what that smells like. Oh my God, that's awful. Let's use it. And that's pretty much what we do. And one time somebody left it in the office, and it was like, we came back in and we went, oh. Let's just take this out. Hopefully Dylan will know what happened. But has anybody thrown up? I'm sure they have. Next question. How about gentleman all the way in the back? Yes, you. And they'll bring a mic to you.
Where is it located?
Where is Insidious located? It's actually located in the Jurassic Park, what we call the Jurassic Park Extended Queue. And if you're driving on the tram, as I know some of you have, from the pictures you've posted, I love you guys. I love you guys that have like, okay, here's the house from Insidious, here's the, the structure of the wood that's going up in the facade. Let's combine these two things together. You guys are good. That's all I have to say. But yes, it's going to be in the Jurassic Park location, which if you guys don't know where that is, that's where we did Texas Chainsaw Massacre last year. Before that, that's where we did the Alice Cooper, Welcome to Our Nightmare Maze, and that's where Insidious is going to be. And what you see, if you're on the tram driving by, and you see them framing that up, that's the Lambert facade that's going up right now. Next question? Okay.
Thank you for the contest you guys did this year. That was fun. And thank you for the ADA. You guys do a great job getting the wheelchairs. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
This seems really expensive, and I'm just wondering, do you actually make money on it? And the second question is, do you have to pay, and you don't have to be specific, but for rights like to Insidious, or do they pay you because they get exposure? I'm just curious.
No, what's great about working with a film that's coming out is we're mutually beneficial to each other. And really, we are. We're going to hype the hell out of Insidious, and the movie's coming out a week before it opens. And the two things work really well in tandem. I think, well, you're the producer. Tell me why you thought this was a good idea to do this with us.
Yeah, it's a trade. It's not no one. The money making for the maze is tickets. It's not for. It's a trade because we think it gets people thinking about Insidious again, and it's fun for us. And like I said, James and Lee, wanted. James said two things to me when we were doing Insidious. One was, he really wanted to have Insidious because he didn't get to participate that much in Saw, so he wanted to. If he got to do Insidious, he really wanted to be. And the other thing he said is, I really want to direct a huge movie. And he got both his things. He got to do Fast and Furious, and he got his Maze. So anyway, that's a long answer to your question, which is that we both benefit from it.
And if you don't know this, what Jason's referencing is James actually is now going to direct Fast and Furious 7 for Universal, so which is of course a huge franchise. So we're all very proud and happy that he's getting to do that film, and it's going to be awesome. But yes, it's horribly expensive. What we do is incredibly expensive, and we're lucky that we get to work with a studio that supports us, and really. That's where you guys, we owe you so much, because without your guys' support...
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, because thanks. When Chris and I brought Horror Nights back in 2006, honestly, we didn't know if there'd be a 2007. We were like crossing our fingers going, please. And there have been a lot of attempts, and it just, for whatever reason, it hadn't been carried on. And once we started doing the movie thing, it took off like a rocket ship, and it's been a rocket ship ever since. But every year we push it intentionally. Every year we know we're making it more expensive on purpose because we feel we owe that to the fans in the quality.
We try every year, you can tell, to make steps forward in like 3D. We try, and you can see that from Rob Zombie to Alice Cooper. We're trying
To Black Sabbath.
We're trying to make big steps forward.
But that's what you have to do if you want to, hopefully if you want to do good work.
Yeah.
How about another question out there? How about right in the front here? Yes.
Hi. I know this is an ongoing issue. She and I have gone to Halloween Horror Nights many years, and I know why it's an issue because so many people want to go. Have you thought more this year about what can be done about the clumping issues when there's too many people in one room and you already know what's going to happen before it happens? It takes away from all of that excitement and the adrenaline rush.
Yeah, we're really popular. But I know what you're talking about. The event's grown leaps and bounds. Like anything, you try to manage it the best of your capabilities. As designers, Chris and I design for that.
Yes.
That's literally how we, when you do anything creative in this field, it doesn't do you any good if you live in a dream world that doesn't exist. And we approach it as reality. We know inevitably at some point we'll be in a conga line situation in some scene, in some attraction. So we actually plan for it and design for it to hopefully still give people a good show.
Yeah. And we're trying to be very conscious of that and where our scares are coming from, areas that we want you to look at, because we're consciously thinking about that as well as you're moving through the room. Tons of curtains, right? You guys see curtains everywhere. Trust me, as a production designer, I would prefer not to have a bunch of curtains. I'd love for you to be able to look at the cool scenery and, take a step back. But the main goal and focus of what we're trying to do is obviously scare. So that's why you've got kind of a curtain before you enter maybe in an area, and maybe not one that you exit so you know where to exit. We're taking into account for the Saturday night conga line. And that's how we have to design it, unfortunately.
And to be honest, the flip side of that is you wait in line longer.
Yep.
So it's a balance, it's a really tricky balance. It's something every single theme park deals with.
Yes.
Okay, next question. How about down here in the front? LL Cool J.
Hey, that's right.
That's right. Mama said knock you out. I'm going to knock you out. Mama said knock you out.
All right. Good note on the shirt. John from the Rain Factory. Love your stuff.
Oh yeah, right on. Good to see you.
Every year you do great stuff with 3D. With Rob Zombie, you had amazing 3D reveals. And Alice Cooper, you did that hallway that made you feel like you were in Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas.
That was him.
That was amazing.
That was him. It wasn't intended, it wasn't designed, it was an experiment.
Not that I would know.
And it messed me up.
Oh, not that I would know, but it completely felt like I was on drugs. It was fantastic.
If you don't remember,
The whole hallway stretches. Anyways, Black Sabbath 3D. Are you going to be doing something what are you doing for the next notch of 3D? Like, what are the things you're playing around with to mess with our senses with 3D?
Yeah, and actually what you're referencing, he's talking about the first hallway in Alice Cooper Goes to Hell 3D last year. It wasn't in the design. You improvised that one in the field.
Yeah. Sometimes we feel, John and I can attest to this, that, we're slamming design together. You see with the level of...
Basically creating 6 movies at once.
Just slamming it together. And in that, I'm trying to get my scenic crew to do as many samples as I can that we can see, and then we can try to make steps forward in 3D. You can see where we've gone from kind of using the red and the blue to more intense UV effects. So that's where the direction is headed. So you're going to see more of that type of stuff.
And you're going to see it translated to the characters now.
Yeah.
That's another thing we just R&D'd this year. And Black Sabbath is the first time we've ever used what I call triggered video.
Yep.
We're going to use it in one scene as a little experiment this year to see if performers can trigger actual video elements of the maze. First time we've ever tried it. And it's a little experiment in Black Sabbath to see if we can take that and make it bigger. Okay, next question. All the way in the back.
Where are all the mazes going to be located? The Walking Dead, Evil Dead, and Black Sabbath.
Evil Dead is behind the mummy. And that's all I can tell you. I know. I can tell you that very soon, in this month, you will know all of those questions will all be answered. But if I tell you now, they will kill me. Next question. Down here in front, right here. Yep. You can just say it loud.
All right. Hey, John. So I was wondering, you guys have the go-go dancers for the guys when you come in a lot of times. There's some sort of sex appeal to horror. That
Really?
happens too. But I just read in the Hollywood Reporter that women were a big part of the purge's success of the audience. And as a character in the past, I know women are great targets in mazes. So how do you work with the genders and the age demographics and what you're targeting to get certain people to hit that need, to get those people there.
Okay.
And also with the movies, like to hit your female.
Yeah, actually, I think Jason should answer about The Purge as far as, and you were saying that you read in the Hollywood Reporter that women were a big part of the fan base of The Purge. Did you expect that?
All of our movies over-index on women under 25. Yeah, women take their scared boyfriends to our.
You know, it's. I'll tell
Where's
you.
our male go-go dancers, huh? There you go.
Exactly.
How about really old man and depends? I would find that scary. No, I'll talk. You know, honestly. And being completely honest, when we first started doing this, we would have what we would call victim roles, right? We have banished the word victim from Horror Nights. Because originally we would, you know, when we first started doing this, it was like, okay, you're the girl that's getting her intestines ripped out. And in talking with our performers, which Chris and I do a lot of, we're there every night of the event, we're constantly going backstage and talking to them, we noticed really early on in Horror Nights, the girls were like, I want to scare. And La Llorona. You know, that's one of the things we did directly because of that. Was, okay, let's give you an entire maze to do that. And go beat the boys and do it. And this year there's a maze called Evil Dead, which has a large female cast, and they're not going, help me, oh God, please help me. They're scaring the living fill in the blank out of you. When you talk about Mia, and you talk about Natalie, and you talk about all the characters in that film.
And these girls are not 6'2".
No, they're not.
They're very small.
Our thinking has honestly changed. We literally don't use the word victim anymore, because what we found is that it made our performers victims. You know, it made them feel like they were victims, and it wasn't particularly scary. So one of the first things we do is we go, I empower all of you to scare. You know. And you know, doing La Llorona 2 years was specifically to do a maze because of all of our female performers saying, we can do that and we can do it better than the boys. And a lot of times they're right. So, next question. How about all the way over on the right? Or maybe your left and right.
Hey, love everything you guys do. I just want to know, real quick, when you read Twitter and Facebook, do some of the comments, whenever you announce a maze, just make you want to break your phone or punch the screen?
Oh, no!
And also, what is your dream project, like franchise, that you haven't done yet?
Oh, okay. Yeah, I read all comments in an addictive-like manner. I can't help it. And I don't know, you've got to know this from the movies, because I think it's a fair question for the movie side, too. The question was, you know...
Yeah, I read, it's a nightmare. My wife it's not good for our marriage. Yeah, but especially when a movie opens, like you read everyone, and it's so hard not to respond to all of them. But
I've coined a phrase for this, Jason. Yeah, I'm using it on Twitter now. It's easy to hate, it's hard to create.
It's easy to hate, it's hard to create. Yeah, exactly. But if I can get over myself, I think it's great that it's great that people engage and are talking about it. And sometimes it definitely hurts though. I mean, it's really it's painful when it's like, this movie was so not scary, it sucks. It's like it does. So just know you all have a lot of power on the internet.
You do have a lot of power. I mean, you really do.
But it's also great to read like it's the scariest movie I ever saw. And that it's also fun. Obviously, you read it to get to the positive ones. Hopefully, they outweigh the negative ones.
But back to your question. Hey, everybody's entitled to an opinion, and if you try to ignore it, that's one of the reasons I read everything, is because if you're going to do anything and you're going to put it out there, you better have the fortitude to deal with the good, the bad, and the ugly,
Yeah, I really agree with that, and there are a lot of people who don't. Creators are like, I never read reviews, and I have more of an issue with than people posting negative things. You're allowed to like or not like something, and you're allowed to put it out there. That's the world we live in for good. And I think I think I do it too much. Maybe we both do it too much. But I think it's important to see what people think. When we did our haunt last year, just like you guys, like I was outside talking to people. When there's a movie that does particularly well or not well that I don't really get, I will go to the theater and I will chat with people after. But I don't like to admit that too often.
But the only thing that really, to answer the phone smashing part of your question, the only thing that really makes me angry is when somebody judges something before they have seen it. That, to me, is ridiculous. Because, like, you don't know what we're doing, you don't know what he's doing yet. Once you've seen it, if you didn't like it, hey, that's fair game, that's the name of the game. But judging something before you've even seen it or know what it is, that's a waste of space. Okay, next question. The one going like that all the way in the back. And thanks to our moderators for hustling around the room and getting everybody's questions. We appreciate it, guys. Thank you.
I have 2 questions. Okay. What's the best night to go to Halloween Horror Nights that's like the least busy? And then what exactly is the budget for each maze that you do?
Oh my God, you asked the forbidden question of all forbidden questions. To be honest, no theme park will ever reveal the budget for anything. And very few, a lot of times movies don't either. It's just something we're not allowed to talk about. I think personally my favorite time, and I think it might be yours too, I like the second weekend and the third weekend.
Oh, absolutely.
And the reason I say that is I think it takes the performers a little bit of time to really get in their groove, and I think they're really grooving by the second or third weekend. So that's my favorite time.
Yes,
Do you have one?
some of the performers, they come to rehearsal, we show them what's going on, John and I work
Train
with
every
them,
single one of them.
And, it just takes a little time for them to get in their groove. Some have never done this before. So
It's not that they're bad or
No.
anything, it's just they really get in the groove by the second or third
And
weekend.
what we mean by kind of getting in their groove is timing.